Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Daniel Mueller, Managing Director of Solid Leaders. Welcome to our Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time networking group, and we're glad you're here. Tonight, we have an agenda, and I'll go over it real quick with you. We're going to have an introduction. We're going to have a success story, one story of networking success. I don't know who's going to tell that story yet. Think about it. But just from those who have been coming to this meeting, I'd just like to hear from you that between last week and this week, you've had some type of networking success better than what you have been having, because that's the point of this meeting. We want you to be better networkers and get more out of networking and enjoy networking more and reap the rewards. Then we'll have a topic overview, and tonight's topic is how to get on boards. And we'll talk about that for a few minutes, and then a group discussion about that. And then we'll talk about what we want to have for next week's agenda, and we'll get some suggestions from you all. So that's our 1 hour this evening, and we'll start with introductions. So for those of you that are new, we'd like you to introduce yourself, and please give us just as brief as possible, like 1 minute about you, your whole life in 1 minute, okay? And we're gonna start with, well, I'll take a volunteer. So Jim, you're gonna be up. Jean Ann, I don't know, you've introduced yourself before, haven't you? You never have, no. Okay, so Jean Ann.
Not in this setting.
Brenda's going to have to introduce herself. And who? Kenny, is this your first time here?
I was on last week's, but I guess with the larger group, yeah.
You didn't introduce yourself, did you?
I did not, no.
So it's going to be you, and then Krishnan and Jeffrey also.
Okay.
So can I pick on one of you, or do you want to volunteer? Who wants to go? Okay, Jean Ann, go ahead. 1 minute.
All right. Thank you guys for letting me join you here this evening. My name is Jean Ann Booth, and I'm a serial entrepreneur and electrical engineer. I sold 2 companies in semiconductors, one to Apple, one to TI. Then I retired, and I was a dive master on a liveaboard dive boat, which was quite awesome. Then I came out of retirement to start my current company, SOLIDleaders, for my mom and other independent but vulnerable populations. And so that's where I am today, here at the SOLIDleaders office.
And Jean Ann has a great product. It's a watch that you wear if you're, what do you say it, how do you say it politically correctly, Jean Ann? If you're old.
To provide discrete support for independent but vulnerable populations.
There you go, discrete support for all people.
Time magazine called us a smartwatch for grandma.
There you go. That's it. That's it. Great product. Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next? Jim, go ahead.
The way Jean Ann described it, I think I want to be part of that group. So we'll go with her with her topic. But so Jim Fennelson, you'd mentioned, Jean Ann, that you're a serial entrepreneur. I've been called a schizophrenic entrepreneur. We bought distressed businesses, turned around and sold them, and did that, had a marketing agency alongside of it. And currently in my form of doing my 60s, I am a president of a nonprofit group that is called Pastor Serve. We do exactly that. We serve pastors. And we have investments that are kind of varied, but the most fun one is we own a gun range. So that's me in a nutshell.
Don't mess with Jim. Okay, thanks for being here, Jim. Okay, who's next? Let's go next. Kenny?
Sure, why not?
Go for it.
I am, my name is Kenny Austin. I'm an executive with a software company. I've been working in professional services and delivering projects and technology solutions for about almost 25 years now. Last year has been a little bit of a pivot for me in my career as I transitioned, same company, but much different side of the business. you know, participating in discussions with Daniel about, you know, portfolio life and looking at different parts of or different pathways going forward. At this point, I'm at the ripe old age of 50, so starting to become real and looking at the horizon over the next 10, 15 years. So good to be part of the group.
Yeah, good to have you here. Okay, I just love Kenny. Brenda, would you like to go next?
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. My name is Brenda Paulson. I'm a senior executive at a pediatric healthcare system in Dallas, Texas. And I have 30 years of experience supporting academic physicians and related activities for medical schools and affiliated health systems.
Good. We're glad you're here. Good. Who else is new? Who else is new, Ann? Well, Joffrey, you're going to turn on your video. Is he connected?
Also, Boris Bloom just joined us.
Boris, you're going to turn on your video, and then just take Jeffrey out of the meeting. And anyone who doesn't turn on their video is not invited. Okay, so you're.
Can you hear me okay?
Boris, yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you can hear me. I'm having trouble getting the video connected. It is not cooperating. It cannot detect your camera.
Introduce yourself, and then you can log out and log back in, and maybe it'll work.
Yeah, it's saying it can't detect my camera for some reason. So
That happens.
that's the
All
problem.
been there, Boris.
Yeah, technical difficulties. Okay. Well, did you want me to introduce myself, Daniel?
Please.
Yeah. So my name's Boris Bloom. My company is My CEO. We are a firm that specializes in working with small and medium-sized entrepreneurial organizations, primarily privately held companies. Typical clients usually have 100 to 250 employees, and we help them with challenges related to people, risk, and cash flow, which is what is the three main components of a crisis situation. So we consider ourselves a crisis consulting firm.
Very good. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. Let's go around and do about a 15-second introduction if you've been here before. So Danny, 15 seconds.
Danny Austin. I'm working with Daniel probably I think 3-4 months now. I work for a food service distribution company, and I'm based out of Dallas, Texas.
Okay, thanks. Stanley.
I'm Stanley Wells. I'm a global HR business leader, currently in transition.
Good. Ann.
Hi all, I am Communications Director at SOLIDleaders. I have experience in public relationships and I have around 10 years of experience in that. I also have experience in marketing and I'm glad to be here. Anything you need regarding this networking, I'm available.
Good. Thank you, Ann. Krishnan.
Yeah. Sure, I'm Krishnan. I'm a Senior Vice President Finance of Qualphon Corporation. We are a BPO company, global BPO company with 14,000 people. Prior to Qualphon, I was in various finance leadership positions with Hewlett-Packard for over 25 years.
Good. Glad you're here. Bill.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Gravett. I am based out of Austin. I'm Vice President of Technology Services for Q2. We make software for regional banks and credit unions, and I'm working with Daniel in his leadership development program.
Good. Thanks. Janae.
Hello, I'm Janae Wilson, based in Austin. I'm a B2B sales executive, primarily in the PC OEM space. And I am also well-versed in the LED lighting, general lighting products as well.
Good. Glad you're here. Chris.
Chris Bowen. I'm the Chief Privacy Security Officer for Clear Data, which is based in Austin. We started the company in Scottsdale, though, so I've used to fly back and forth a lot, now not so much. But I'm in charge of global risk, privacy and security of our products, subject matter expertise in certain areas. I see a couple of colleagues with whom I've worked, Michael and Scott, both great folks, great guys, and huge fan of Solid Leaders. So thank you.
Alan.
Got to hit off mute. Alan Rudolph, I'm an executive, enterprise SaaS, B2B, focused on chief customer officer, customer experience, customer success roles. And I've been working with Daniel now for about 2 months, and I'm in transition.
Good, thanks, glad you're here. Scott.
Yeah.
Scott White. I am formerly with ClearData, where I was the chief strategy officer, working with Chris and Daniel, Michael, and now I am in transition looking for a healthcare, life sciences leadership role. And I've got a couple offers I'm evaluating to make a decision here. So,
yeah, very exciting offers too. Yep. Sharon.
Hey guys, this is Sharad Kakera. I have overall 30 years of experience, last 12 as CTO and CIO for a bunch of companies, many of them backed by private equity firms. Based in Dallas, but work here in Houston, Texas. So been doing this for a little more than 3 years, looking for something closer to home. But primarily been a technology executive, lots of e-commerce support I provided, ERPs for supply chain. Recently, I worked on digital transformation for organizations. So happy where I am, but a little tired traveling every week, looking for something in Dallas.
Yeah, and Michael.
Yeah, Mike Chernoff. I'm VP of Finance with Azova Health, which is based in Utah, although I'm located in Austin, Texas. And looking for my next role as in a SaaS company, VC or PE backed, as a controller or VP of Finance.
Good. All right. Good. Impressive group of folks. And good looking at that. Okay, so did I get everyone? Everyone, yes? Okay, good. Stop me, and if I ever miss anyone, please. Okay. All right, so success story. Who has a story of networking success between last week and this week, or sometime the month of July? Networking success as a result of this group. Don't all jump in at once, please.
I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've connected with a couple of people that were in the group here before, and James Mann got a job as a CFO, and I'm currently working with him to see if there's an opportunity for a controller position. Sean Burke also got a position in San Francisco via some networking, and I had been sending feeds to both him and James. And then recently I just connected with Marcus, who is up for a CFO role in a SaaS company, and there might be some opportunity there for me. So
that's great.
So yeah, just a lot of connecting and talking with a lot of people. So,
yeah, that's great. Marcus was my CFO back in 2012.
Yeah, he told me that.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah, he's a very good guy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that just kind of run through here. I mean, I don't know, maybe we've had 100 people run through the networking so far. And so Ann is keeping a list, and anyone who comes, if you're okay with doing a little networking with folks, then you're on that list. And just see Ann if you don't want to be on her list. And if she sends it out and you say, nope, you got wrong information on me, just correct her. But Ann's the keeper of the networking list. So we're just trying to encourage people to connect here. And that's the whole reason I started this. So back in, I don't know, 3.5 months ago or so, I just got the idea, because now that everyone's on Zoom and I'm 100% virtual, every time I have a coaching call, I see the first person that's about to hang up and the person that's coming online in my waiting room. And at times I'll put them together and do a little networking, just like I used to do in the old days when I had an office and I would have one client walking in the door and one client leaving my office, and I would put them together for a few minutes, and great things happened as a result. So I'm thinking, well, let's do the same thing but with a group, because I've had online physical networking groups where I put people together in the same city. But now I think with Zoom, it makes us very flexible, where we can have people from all over the country. So I know today we have people from probably 7 different cities represented, which is really cool. So that's the idea. It's experimental, so I don't have it down, and I'm trying different things. Last week we had a recruiter show up, and we got to ask a lot of questions of that recruiter. It was an executive search professional that was with a major firm in Houston, and I thought it was an excellent meeting. I got a lot of great feedback from everyone about it, and insight into how to work with recruiters. Today, the topic is how to get on boards. And I'll say this about getting on boards. It's the #1 thing that most executives end up doing as they get close to retirement. And I don't believe that retirement is a good idea. I believe semi-retirement is more appropriate for the true executive. My experience, having done this for 33 years, I've been watching executives retire, and some successfully, some unsuccessfully. Those that have successfully retired have not stopped doing things. They've slowed down, yes, and they've started diversifying, and they've done a number of different things. One of the most common things that executives do when they're not running a full-time job, when they're not running a company or in a full-time role, is they get on boards. But the question is, when do you get on boards? And how do you get on boards? What kind of boards do you get on? So I'll answer the first question. When do you get on boards? I think you get on boards as early in your career as possible, because the very first question that CEOs are going to be asking about you, or executive directors, if it's a nonprofit, are going to be asking about you is what? What's the one question that you're going to ask about a potential board member? What do you think?
Have you served before?
That's right.
Have you served before? How much board experience do you have, right? So I see a huge mistake in waiting until you're almost at that semi-retirement age, or I call it portfolio life. Portfolio meaning a diversified portfolio of activities. And I see a huge problem in waiting until you're ready for that to start looking for board roles. And I believe the earlier in your career that you can get board experience, the better. So let me pause there for a second, and let's just have a little discussion around it. What do you think? Do you push back? If you disagree, disagree openly and tell me why, and I'm open to being corrected. And if you do agree, tell me why and tell me your experience, okay? Open discussion.
So Daniel, this is Krishnan. If we have to get on a board, do you need permission from your current employer? If you are currently working, do you need their permission? Will there be any conflict of interest?
That is a great question.
Right.
What do y'all think?
Absolutely, without question.
Absolutely, without question. Especially if you're in a public company. Especially if you're in a public company. Now, Jim, what do you think? You're the CFO and COO of a nonprofit. What do you think? If I was working in this nonprofit, past to serve, would you want me to get your permission to get on a board?
Yes, and I think it's just good protocol, because then you don't surprise anybody with something. Let's say the other organization blows up or gets a lot of press. You don't want that to be the way people find out. So I currently serve as president of Pastor Serve. I went to our board, and I became a board member of another nonprofit called Save the Storks. But I didn't accept that until I went to my current board.
Ah, okay, good. Good.
Daniel, I'll take it from a risk side, since I'm going through cyber and D&O insurance renewals right now. I would say that you don't want to join a board that doesn't have adequate D&O insurance either.
Okay. Does everyone know what D&O insurance is? Chris, would you just explain that?
Well, yeah, if there's a problem with the company that floats up to liability with the board, you don't want to be covering that check yourself. You want to have some kind of a way to offload that risk to an insurance policy.
Yeah, D&O stands for directors and officers. So a directors and officers insurance policy. Good.
Hey, Daniel.
Yes.
At Clear Data, they had two different kinds of boards. They had the board that was sort of the management and they were the investors, and then they had an advisory board. Does it make a difference as a board, just being on a board?
Well, what do y'all, well, the question is, does it make a difference for permission? Because that's the question we're talking about right now. We're talking about, should you get permission? So let's ask that question.
Yeah,
should you
I think
get
permission,
right?
yeah.
Shaking your head, yes.
Yeah,
Still,
you should still get permission. It's a lower risk. Advisory board is much lower, fiduciary. There isn't typically any fiduciary responsibility, et cetera.
so what I'm hearing is that we're agreeing no surprises. It is better to just not surprise your boss, not surprise a board if you're a CEO reporting to the board. Better, if you're going to get on a board, any kind of board, either nonprofit, for-profit, or advisory, that you should get permission or at least communicate that and have a discussion, right?
I mean, Daniel, from an HR standpoint, one, it should be in the policy and procedure manual. Two, an executive is generally speaking required to identify any business interests. And since this would be deemed a business interest, it's not black and white, it's clear. I mean, there's no gray there. You have to notify legally.
Got it. Good thinking around this.
Yeah, I also disclose them on my annual conflict of interest requirements.
Got it. Good. All right. So what was the other question we had about that? I forgot. There was two questions.
So he was asking about the difference between the advisory versus the board member.
Yes. So do y'all understand what an advisory board is, right? So an advisory board is generally a group that is put together to give advice. It often does not function like a cohesive board. It often is just a collection of people that are called the advisory board, but they're really a collection of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 advisors that a CEO will call on for advice from time to time.
Is it a way to have a stepping stone to be on a traditional board that you think of with fiduciary responsibility?
It certainly gives you board experience in the sense, well, let me say this. Let me take that back. It gives you board creds. It doesn't necessarily give you board experience. I've started a number of advisory boards for clients over the years, and they were generally speaking just a group of advisors to the company. And very few of them actually ever had any board meetings. So you wouldn't be getting board meeting experience and experience of how to function as a board member, but you certainly get that cred on LinkedIn or on your resume, and it's certainly helpful to show intention. But that's my opinion. What do y'all think? What's y'all's opinion?
Yeah, completely agree.
I agree with that. I think a lot of advisory boards give credibility to the organization rather than the other way around.
Fair. It's often to get credibility for the organization, so they're wanting your name for the organization's sake. It may not give you as much of a oomph, but whatever. Brenda, are you on any boards?
I am on the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council Research and Data Integrity Board.
Got it. Is that an elected position?
Yes, it is an elected position. It's a board that specifically looks at data and research requests from the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council, which collects all hospital data across DFW, North Texas, into one centralized data set that the participating hospitals can request that information. So if you want to know population, let's say, of what happens to people that have lower extremity thrombosis, and you don't want to just look at your hospital's data, you want to have a much larger data set, you can pull that data from every single hospital source from DFW who participates and have thousands of lives in that data set to then start to build a better understanding of clinical interventions and outcomes. And as we move more and more to artificial intelligence starting to inform different clinical practices, having massive data sets is incredibly important. So this board is a subset of the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council board.
How did you get on that board?
So I'm the Vice President for Research and Professional Services at Children's Health in Dallas, Texas, which has 3 hospitals. And so obviously research is part of my area, and I made a request to my boss, who's the president of the health system, that I wanted to get engaged with boards in Dallas. I was previously engaged in nonprofit boards in previous life in a different state. And there was an opening, and he nominated me, and the board approved my nomination.
Got it. So what does this topic that we're talking about tonight have anything to do with networking? How did Brenda get on her board? She did, wouldn't you call that networking? Is that true? Yes? Mm-hmm. Who's on a board? I just want to prove out this theory that this is an integral part. Jim, how did you get on the board you're on now?
Well, let's use, so I'm on a few, but let's use Save the Storks. It happened over a networking event in a group I'm a part of called Holy Smokes. So it was over a cigar with a guy from a different state who made an introduction.
Yep, networking. Okay,
Yep.
Help me prove this out. Okay, I want to make this point. Jean Ann, you're on boards?
Yes. So well, the only one I'm active on right now, because it is completely full-time, is of course Unaliware. But in previous boards, I've been on 3 company boards and 2 nonprofits. For the companies, 2 of them were networking based. They were looking for a skill set and perspective. And then in the nonprofits, they were all networking based. So it was, you know, do you know anybody else who knows things like this, who's also passionate about this? Right, some of my robotic stuff, nonprofit.
Who else is on boards? Who else here is on boards? Anyone? Alan, you're not on the board? Not yet? You're a little young yet.
Yeah, yes, I'm on nonprofit boards and then on advisory boards, but I'm not on a, you know, the full board, full for-profit board.
How did you get on your nonprofit boards?
It was a colleague at, it was absolutely networking. A colleague at Dignity Health for one board, and then a healthcare colleague for another board. Absolutely.
Got it. Anyone else? Christian, Stanley? No? No? Okay. So, but we accept that networking gets you on boards, yes? No doubt about it. Networking is the single primary way that you get on boards. However, I do know that recruiters also get you on boards. So there are recruiters out there that specialize in recruiting board members. So just know that.
Investment too, right? Though, Daniel, like a lot of seats on boards are for investors as well.
Yes, correct. So like a venture capitalist, VCs will invest in a company and then sit on the board of the company they're investing in. Private equity will, the private equity partners will generally sit on the board of the company that they're investing in. But in this case, today I spoke to someone who was recruited to a board seat of a private equity company, and he knew nothing about the company, and now he's been recruited to be a board member, and he's a board member on a board of a private equity company. So that's interesting. It's called an independent board member. So VCs have independent board members, private equity. Family offices is the third kind, and they have independent board members as well, but generally the CFO of the family office. So a family, think of a wealthy family, they've got $100 million, and the kids are all being given $1 million here and there to start their little businesses, and the CFO is also taking the family money and then investing it in buying companies and putting CEOs in place of those companies. And then that CFO will sit on the board, or maybe a family member will sit on the board of that family office funded company. That's the third most common. And then the fourth is public company boards, where you are recruited. Oftentimes it's an executive search firm. Oftentimes it's one of the majors like Korn Ferry, Heidrick & Struggles, Spencer Stewart, to recruit you to sit on a public company board. And that's generally the most lucrative board positions, where you're paid $150,000 a year to go to 4 board meetings per year. But you also have heavy duty responsibilities, and you also are expected usually to be involved in a committee, audit committee or compensation committee, etc.
You also have risk on those.
And you also have risk, much more risk in public company boards than you have in private company boards. But to someone's point earlier, have directors and officers, make sure you have D&O insurance. So the other way around, let's talk about networking. So yes, networking to get on boards. Now, once you're on a board, is it good for your networking? Is it good networking to be on a board? Jim?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've met a lot of interesting people while serving on boards, both for-profit, nonprofit. I was on one publicly traded company board, and it was phenomenal who came through the doors.
Nice. G-Dan?
Yeah, very much so. And same thing. I mean, you know, I've met some really interesting people that would not have been in my normal circle through some of the boards.
Right. Who else is on boards? That Scott?
Yes, actually, one of my colleagues on a nonprofit board I'm now a candidate to be an operating partner in his venture fund. So yes.
Right. Cool. Good. Good. Brenda, have you been on any other boards other than this one?
I have. I was on a nonprofit board in Arizona. And so I primarily focus on nonprofit boards. And so it was an entity that provided social services to seriously mentally ill individuals within the Southern Arizona area.
Good. And did you find it good networking?
To be honest with you, no, because I knew all the players. And so it was a very close local board. And so they have a behavioral health community is pretty small. So you know everybody.
Okay. I think that's the exception rather than the rule, but I think you'll find it more often on nonprofit. Well, I don't know. I'm really talking out of school here. I think it can go either way. It depends upon the kind of board and what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I think it's the focus of the board, and if it's a very locally focused board versus a broader board. So I'm thinking, you know, if you served on such as like a United Way board, you would meet very, very interesting people, probably much more similar to a corporate board than, you know, a small company, non-for-profit that's directly delivering services to a clientele.
Sure, sure.
And I was going to suggest, I mean, one of the other ways to do the networking, if you want to get on a board, is to join an ACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors. And usually you can find somebody who will invite you to, I don't remember what the rules are, it's probably 3 events a year. I end up getting to go to more because I have so many investors that I do 3 from this investor and 3 from that investor. And so I get to go to a lot of their events. But it's, you know, when you have those middle market companies, most of them are members of NACD. And so if they're looking for somebody, that's a great place to network because those boards are usually actually at the NACD meetings.
Mm-hmm. So Gina, that's really fascinating that you brought that up because I was just looking at becoming an NACD member. And they're having a special deal this year that I think you get to go to the conference for free. It's a virtual conference.
Oh, wow.
In September. And so it's going to be virtual this year. And if you're an NACD member, it's free. So, Ann, would you do me a favor and please take an action to have us sign up for that? The National Association of Corporate Directors is the name of the organization. For short, NACD. Has anyone been a member of it? Go ahead, Gina. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I've been to a number of their events in the Austin area over the last couple of years, and they have always been very enlightening and engaging events. They'll have panels and they'll talk about risk. Probably if they had one right now, they'd be talking about how your D&O is going to be up 130 to 160% over last year's premium, because that's where mine was. You know, so, you know, it's a pretty good organization. But again, if the goal is to try to get on a corporate board, that is one of the best places that you're going to find people who might be looking to add to the companies that they're serving already.
Well, all of you are very young on this call compared to my experience. So let me tell you when my eyes were opened to being a board member and how old you can be and be an effective board member. So I was in Houston doing some work for a company. This is about 10 or 11 years ago, 12 years ago now. And so I do this thing called 360-degree assessments. And I'll interview the entire board. Let's say it's the CEO that I'm doing an assessment of. I'll interview the entire board and all the direct reports, some peers, maybe even a spouse and some friends, whatever. About 20 people in somebody's world. That's called a 360. Anyway, so I was doing a 360 for the CEO of a oil and gas company in Houston, Texas. And they put me in the board room. And this was the day before the board meeting when all the board members were coming in from out of town, et cetera, for the board meeting. And so they just stuck me in the boardroom, and they just marched these people every hour on the hour for 8 hours. I had one of these board members in front of me. And folks, they came in on walkers. They did. They really did. I think the average age of that board must have been about 78, and the range was 70 to 85. So you can be a board member and keep your fingers in the game of this thing that we love called business, or this thing that we love called nonprofits, making something happen. I mean, that's really what it's about, right? Whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, it's trying to make things happen. And you can do it into your 80s. So it's never too late to start, and it's never too early to start thinking about it. So you could really have a very rich portfolio activity sitting on boards. It can make you money. It can give you stimulation, intellectual and mental stimulation. It can help your networking. And of course, it goes without saying, you're making a contribution to that organization, right? Okay, let me pause there for a minute and just have some questions or any discussion around this.
Daniel, we talked before about companies providing the pathway to being a board, joining a board. I think that was one of the reasons why we originally talked. It was something that was of interest to me. And there are whether those work or not, and kind of classifying those that are, taking advantage of that interest for a fee, and maybe try to characterize, what you hear as a service. We'll get you on a board, pay this fee, and we'll work to get you there. If there's other companies that actually work or not. No,
I don't think so. Does anyone? Those companies that are spamming you saying, pay us some money and we'll get you on a board.
Never used one.
No success stories. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard of a success story in 33 years, Kenny.
Mm-hmm. But
I've heard of a lot of people paying money for it.
Sure. Yeah. There's a business there.
I mean, yeah. So I just don't think it's worth it.
Well, to me, and the NACD is a logical stepping stone. To me, it's a logical first step with, taking a course, taking a test. From that point, then what? There's a then what question that I would have.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Then what?
Well, Kenny, I was suggesting NACD, not necessarily to get the certification, but instead to go to every event they have so that you can meet everybody else.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is networking with all of the other directors of all of the other companies. And at any given time, I mean, I had an open spot on my board for, probably 18 months, which in the life of a startup is a really long time. And I just filled it last week. So, I wasn't suggesting, it's not like a Microsoft certification where you're going to be a board specialist.
Yeah.
You could do that, but I was suggesting it for the networking.
Sure. Okay.
Now that's a very legitimate organization, and you'd pay, I think, $1,200 right now for the year, not the $300 that this company will take for you, and you won't get anything for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not only that, but oftentimes if you know anybody in the area who's on a board and it's a board that has an NACD membership, they can get you a discount.
Jean-Ann.
I am a cheap bastard, as you well know. And so I do not have a membership because I have lots of investors who
Yeah.
take me to each meeting because they can do 3 a piece a year.
And talk to my friend Jim Offerdahl, please, and see, because he said he's a member, but he's not using it. So set up a meeting and let me see if I can piggyback on his for that conference. Maybe he wants to go. Conference is in September. It's a 2 or 3 day conference. So the point is, the question, sorry, is how do you get on boards, right? Kenny, how do you get on boards? What do you do?
Well, you network. You get in. You start with, I think, glancing at the site as we've been talking, right? I think there's a lot there as at least resources and reference material, and this is one of those, the classic case of, do you get a job without the experience? You got to have the experience to get the job. So
that's right.
Yeah.
It just takes breaking the ice. But I will say this: networking with board members and CEOs and executive directors. Executive director is the equivalent of a CEO. It's just on the nonprofit side. So networking with the Jim Fedelsons of the world, and the Brenda Paulsons of the world will get you exposure to their boards, or networking with the Jean Ann Booths of the world, who is connected with a lot of VCs and a lot of investors and a lot of boards in the startup space. So there's but know where you want to work, right? So there's the VC boards, private equity backed boards, privately held company boards, family office boards, publicly traded boards, and nonprofit boards.
I think a big part of it too is you have to have your elevator pitch of what it is you're going to bring to the board. Right? As the independent board member, unless you've got a bunch of money and you put money in and you get to take an investor seat, but as an independent representative on the board, usually they're domain experts. So like on my company's board right now, I have 2 independent spots. One of them is a specialist in my marketplace selling through the traditional channel, and the other is a specialist in selling consumer direct to consumer for healthcare goods. And so that's super important to us because they're completely different, and they change. Who we're talking to at any one time changes what it is that we do in the definition of the strategies and the tactics that we pursue for the success of the company. So, you need to create your same elevator pitch that says, I'm a specialist in marketing or sales, direct to consumer, or, I'm the public finance guy who's going to be able to help you do your next debt round, whatever that is. By the way, that part's not me.
Yes, I agree with everything that Jean Ann said. And I also think you need a board bio. So you need a bio, and it's less about a resume, more about a one-pager that goes through your background. And would you please send out to everyone after this meeting some examples of board bios, and see me, and I'll give you a list of people that I coach that are board members that are helping get on more boards, and they have board bios. So we'll send those out so you can see what a board bio looks like. Now it is back to Kenny's statement earlier of, it's kind of this, well, to have a board bio, you have to have something to put on it, right? Well, you have your whole career to put on it, but you don't have any boards to put on it. Yes, well, there's the case for maybe getting on an advisory board. to start, but you got to break the ice and get on your first board. And yes, it's difficult, but it's all things are possible through networking. So you just have to be intentional about it and try. But the first,
Well, I think a nonprofit board is a good place to start because there isn't some of the other expectations. And if it's something you're passionate about or you already support the organization, sometimes that's a good path. But I also just want to affirm something you said close to the beginning of our time, which was get on as young as you can. And I think in order to do that, you want to eliminate barriers to entry. So smaller nonprofits to start, at least for me, was a good process. I got on my first nonprofit board when I was 23.
Yep.
You know, and by the time I was 50, I was on a publicly traded board. So, you know, but I would, if I hadn't done the others, I shouldn't have been on the last one.
Huge words of wisdom there, folks. So, yes.
I was going to add just one more thing, Daniel, too, which was, you know, if you haven't, I mean, I totally agree with what Jim says. I mean, nonprofits are a great place to start, and you should recognize that in joining a nonprofit board, you're going to get to dust off those fundraising skills again. So be ready, because isn't that right? That's right. But it's good for you. The other thing is, you know, when I've had, like when I constituted the board for this company, because we have so many angel investors and not VCs, you know, my board was less experienced actually than I was on the investor side. And so part of the initial gelling of the board was actually working with everybody to understand the difference between, you know, my background was I was an executive and I handled this and I handled that and I have operational excellence. And so I want to go into the board meeting and basically I want to get an ops review. Well, that's not what the board meeting's about, right? Because if you're on the board, you're not responsible for any of that execution. And it took a while to help people understand the difference between, you know, here's where we're going and the strategy and tactics and the place that I want to make sure that we talk about things versus, you know, you want to look at, you know, bounce rates on the website and, you know, what's our action plan to improve them? You know, that's totally tactical and not your business, but the other is, right? If that helps any, I don't know.
Yeah, that helps. Sure. Well, well, folks, start early, and it's a great place to start. Is the nonprofits, because they need your help. They need your help, and this is a way of giving back and a way of getting experience. And Mike, to your earlier question about advisory board versus other boards, an advisory board, you don't necessarily get that real board experience, board function experience, whereas on a nonprofit you will. And it'll really test your patience, especially those type A's amongst you, because they just don't move as fast as the for-profits, right? They don't move as fast, and it's more of a committee kind of mentality oftentimes.
That is great counsel, Daniel, as well as the comments about fundraising. That's oftentimes, you know, the principal reason why they want you, which is a good thing. If you're a believer in the cause, that's all right.
But I think too, that to me, that was always one of the networking opportunities. I got to talk to a lot of donors. And donors do interesting things.
Yeah, if you're calling on donors and donors are looking at writing $5,000 checks, usually these people that are writing a $5,000 check is also a mover and a shaker in business or in the community.
Yeah, there's somebody in my company who does that. She's actually been on the board of the Austin Parks Trails for the last 6 years, and in their fundraising, I mean, I'm not sure that there's a CEO in Austin that she hasn't talked to about, you know, will your company sponsor the Austin Trail? Will your company sponsor the Austin Trail? And they'll take those calls because it's a nonprofit.
Yep. Yep. Great discussion, everyone. We're at time, so I'm very grateful that that we got to be together this evening. For next week, we're going to talk about LinkedIn, networking on LinkedIn, and best practices of networking on LinkedIn. Anne is going to make a little bit of a presentation. She's just learning about it now. Okay, on how to use LinkedIn and all the different features of LinkedIn. Okay, just prepare something and I'll work with you during the week on that, okay? But we'll have a little bit of best practices on networking using LinkedIn. Next week, invite your friends, invite your colleagues, and let's feel free to mix it up during the week with each other. Okay?
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you all very much for coming. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Daniel.
it.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Daniel.
having
Thanks,
me.
everybody.
Thanks, Daniel.
Hi.
Thank you.
Daniel,
Good night.
do you have 2 minutes?
Yes, you can stay. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.